My name is Serafina, I am 28 years old, and 3 months ago I discovered my family had stolen nearly everything I had worked for. When my mother casually mentioned over Sunday dinner that they had used 90% of my savings account to purchase my sister Vivian's dream house, I felt the world shift beneath my feet. But what my sister said next would shatter every assumption I had about blood loyalty and family bonds forever. The aftermath would destroy our family dynamic in ways none of us could have imagined. Where are you watching from today? If this family betrayal story sounds familiar or shocking, smash that like button and hit subscribe because this revenge journey is about to get intense. Let me know in the comments if you have ever experienced family financial betrayal like this. The revelation came during what should have been a routine family dinner at my childhood home in suburban Phoenix. I had been working double shifts as a registered nurse at Phoenix General Hospital for the past 4 years, meticulously saving every penny I could spare. My goal was simple yet ambitious: purchase my first home before my 30th birthday. I had sacrificed countless social events, skipped vacations, and lived in a cramped studio apartment just to watch that savings account grow to $47,000. That particular Sunday evening started like any other. My mother, Patricia, bustled around the kitchen preparing her famous pot roast while my father, Robert, watched football in his worn leather recliner. My younger sister Vivian sat at the dining table, scrolling through her phone with that familiar air of entitlement she had carried since childhood. At 25, Vivian had never held a steady job longer than 6 months, preferring to bounce between part-time retail positions while living rent-free in our parents' guest room. The conversation began innocently enough. Vivian mentioned she had found the perfect house in Scottsdale, a 3-bedroom ranch with a swimming pool that she absolutely had to have. The asking price was $42,000, which seemed impossibly affordable for such a desirable area. I should have been suspicious immediately, but I was more focused on calculating whether I could finally start seriously house hunting myself. That was when my mother made the announcement that would change everything. She set down her serving spoon and smiled warmly at me, as if she were sharing wonderful news. "Serafina, sweetheart, we have something to tell you. We used your savings account to help Vivian buy her house. It was such a good investment opportunity, and we knew you would want to help your sister." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "What do you mean you used my savings account?" My father looked up from his game, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "Now, Sarah, before you get upset, let me explain. Vivian needed our help, and since you are doing so well financially, we thought you could spare the money temporarily." "Temporarily?" My voice rose despite my attempts to stay calm. "You took my money without asking me." Vivian finally looked up from her phone, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Oh please, Sarah, do not be so dramatic. You live like a monk anyway. What do you even need all that money for? At least now it is being put to good use instead of just sitting there collecting dust in some boring savings account." I felt my hands trembling as the full weight of their betrayal settled in. "That money was for my house. I have been saving for 4 years. How did you even access my account?" My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Your father is still listed as a joint account holder from when you were 18. We figured since we helped you open the account, we had every right to use it for family emergencies. A house for Vivian is not an emergency." I stood up so quickly my chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. "That was my entire future you just gave away." "Stop being so selfish," Vivian snapped, finally putting down her phone to engage fully in the conversation. "Family is supposed to help each other. Besides, you can always save up again. You have a good job." I needed this house now, and Mom and Dad made the smart choice to invest in property instead of letting your money waste away in a pathetic savings account earning basically no interest. The casual cruelty in her tone was breathtaking. Here was my sister, who had never worked a full-time job in her adult life, lecturing me about financial responsibility while celebrating the theft of my life savings. But what truly shocked me was how our parents were nodding along as if her logic made perfect sense. "Besides," my father added, clearly trying to play peacemaker, "this keeps the money in the family. Vivian will pay it back eventually." "Eventually?" I laughed bitterly. With what money? She cannot even hold down a retail job for more than a few months. How is she supposed to pay back $42,000? The house will appreciate in value, my mother said confidently. This was actually a favor to you, Serafina. Your money is now invested in real estate instead of earning pennies in the bank. I stared at my family, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time in my adult life. My parents, who had always preached about fairness and treating their daughters equally, had systematically robbed me to benefit their favorite child. And Vivian, who I had protected and defended throughout our childhood despite her constant manipulation, was sitting there acting as if I were being unreasonable for objecting to the theft of my entire financial future. I want my money back, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. All of it. Now. Vivian scoffed. That is not happening. The house is already purchased. The papers are signed. Besides, you should be thanking us for making such a smart investment on your behalf. Smart investment? I could not believe what I was hearing. You stole my money and bought yourself a house. How is that an investment for me? Because now you have equity in real estate instead of cash that could be lost or stolen, my father explained patiently, as if I were a child who needed simple concepts explained slowly. The conversation continued for another hour, with my parents and sister presenting increasingly ridiculous justifications for their actions. They suggested I could live in the guest room of Vivian's new house and pay her rent, effectively becoming a tenant in a property purchased with my own stolen money. They proposed I could consider it an early inheritance, ignoring the fact that they were both healthy and nowhere near death. Most insulting of all, they implied that I was being greedy and selfish for wanting my own money returned to me. As I drove back to my tiny studio apartment that night, my mind was reeling. The family I had loved and trusted my entire life had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. They had stolen not just my money, but my dreams, my security, and my faith in the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. But as the initial shock began to wear off, a cold clarity started to take its place. If my family wanted to play games with my future, then I would learn the rules and play to win. The next morning brought a kind of crystalline clarity I had never experienced before. I woke up in my cramped studio apartment, looked around at the modest life I had built through honest work and careful planning, and realized that everything had changed overnight. My family had shown me exactly who they were, and now I needed to respond accordingly. I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years and spent the entire day researching my legal options. What I discovered was both encouraging and infuriating. Since my father was technically listed as a joint account holder, the bank would not consider the withdrawal theft in the traditional sense. However, the fact that the money had been taken without my knowledge or consent and used for a purpose that provided me no benefit opened several potential avenues for legal action. I scheduled consultations with 3 different attorneys, paying for each meeting with my emergency credit card. The consensus was clear. I had a strong case for financial elder abuse, fraud, and potentially criminal theft. The joint account status complicated things, but did not eliminate my rights entirely. More importantly, every lawyer I spoke with emphasized that I needed to act quickly and decisively. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from my family. My mother sent cheerful texts asking when I would come visit Vivian's new house, as if nothing had happened. My father left voicemails explaining that he had spoken with their financial advisor about setting up a payment plan for me to eventually recover some of the money. Vivian posted photos on social media of her new swimming pool, tagging our parents and thanking them for making her dreams come true. The casual way they were all moving forward, as if my financial devastation was just a minor inconvenience to be managed, crystallized my resolve. They had made a choice to prioritize Vivian's wants over my needs, and now they would live with the consequences of that decision. I started by documenting everything. I printed bank statements showing the steady deposits I had made over 4 years, highlighting the disciplined saving pattern that proved this was my money, earned through my labor. I downloaded screenshots of Vivian's social media posts celebrating her new house. I saved every text message and voicemail from that weekend, creating a timeline of their attempts to justify and normalize what they had done. Next, I began building my support network. I called my cousin Marcus, who worked as a financial advisor in Denver and had always been the family member most willing to speak truth to power. When I explained the situation, his response was immediate and gratifying. "Sarah, what they did is absolutely unconscionable," he said, his voice tight with anger. "I do not care if Vivian is family. Taking someone's life savings without permission is theft, period. You need to protect yourself legally and financially." Marcus connected me with a forensic accountant who specialized in family financial disputes. Dr. Jennifer Walsh was a sharp woman in her 50s who had seen every variation of family money drama imaginable. During our consultation, she outlined a comprehensive strategy for documenting the damage and building an ironclad case for restitution. "The key," Dr. Walsh explained, "is establishing that this was your money, saved through your efforts, for your specific goals. The fact that your sister is now benefiting exclusively from your sacrifice, while you receive nothing in return, makes this a clear case of financial exploitation." I also reached out to my mentor at the hospital, Dr. Patricia Chin, who had guided my nursing career from the beginning. When I explained my situation during a coffee meeting, her reaction was swift and supportive. "Serafina, I have seen families destroy themselves over money before, but what your parents did crosses every line imaginable. You have every right to pursue this legally. More than that, you have an obligation to yourself to fight for what is rightfully yours." Dr. Chin offered something even more valuable than emotional support. She connected me with several colleagues who had experience with family legal battles and could provide both practical advice and character references if needed. As I built my case and support network, I also began implementing immediate protective measures. I opened new accounts at a completely different bank, ensuring that no family members could access my future earnings. I changed all my passwords and security questions, removing any information that my family might know. I even arranged for my mail to be forwarded to a post office box, eliminating any chance that sensitive legal documents might be intercepted. The hardest part was maintaining normal interactions with my family while preparing for war. They continued to call and text as if everything was fine, inviting me to family dinners and sharing updates about Vivian's house renovations. Each message felt like salt in an open wound, but I forced myself to respond neutrally, giving them no indication that I was building a case against them. During one particularly difficult phone call, my mother actually had the audacity to suggest that I should be grateful for the learning experience this had provided. "Serafina, honey, this whole situation is teaching you valuable lessons about family loyalty and the importance of sharing with the people you love. Someday you will thank us for showing you that money is not as important as relationships." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood, but managed to respond calmly. "I understand your perspective, Mom. I am still processing everything." Meanwhile, Vivian continued posting pictures of her new house on social media, each image feeling like a deliberate provocation. She shared photos of expensive furniture she was buying, dinner parties she was hosting, and renovation projects she was planning. Every post was a reminder of how my stolen money was funding her lifestyle, while I struggled to rebuild my financial future from nothing. The most insulting post came 3 weeks after the initial theft. Vivian shared a photo of herself lounging by her new pool with the caption, "Sometimes the universe just aligns to give you exactly what you need when you need it most. Grateful for family who believes in investing in each other's dreams." The comments from friends and extended family members, congratulating her on her good fortune and praising our parents for their generosity, made my stomach turn. They had no idea that her dream house was built on the foundation of my destroyed financial security. But their ignorance also gave me an opportunity. I began carefully documenting these social media posts, building a record of how my family was presenting this theft to the outside world. Their public celebration of Vivian's good fortune, combined with their complete silence about the source of the money, would become powerful evidence of their consciousness of wrongdoing. By the end of that month, my legal strategy was in place, my documentation was comprehensive, and my resolve was absolute. My family had taught me that blood relationships meant nothing when money was involved. Now I would teach them that actions have consequences, even within families. The turning point came exactly 1 month after the theft, during what my mother had cheerfully described as a family celebration dinner to officially welcome Vivian into homeownership. The irony was not lost on me that they were asking me to celebrate the purchase of a house bought with my own stolen money. I arrived at my parents' house that evening carrying a manila folder and wearing the kind of smile that had gotten me through countless difficult shifts at the hospital. My family was gathered in the living room, glasses of champagne already poured, waiting to toast Vivian's achievement. "Sarah," my mother exclaimed, rushing to hug me. "I am so glad you decided to join us. This is exactly what family dinners should be about, celebrating each other's successes." Vivian sat curled up on the couch, looking smugly satisfied as she scrolled through photos on her phone. She had spent the afternoon posting a virtual tour of her new house, complete with captions describing each room and thanking our parents for their incredible generosity and wisdom. "Look at this, Sarah," she said without looking up from her screen. "The real estate agent says my house has already increased in value by $3,000 since I bought it. See? Mom and Dad were right about it being a smart investment." I maintained my smile as I sat down across from her. "That is wonderful news, Vivian. Actually, I have been doing some research on real estate investments myself. I brought some information I thought the family might find interesting." My father raised his champagne glass, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. "Before we get into any business talk, let's toast to Vivian's new house and to our family's commitment to helping each other achieve our dreams." "Actually, Dad, I think my research is directly relevant to tonight's celebration." I opened my manila folder and pulled out the first document, a detailed financial analysis prepared by Dr. Walsh that outlined exactly how much money I had saved, how it had been taken, and what the legal implications were. The room fell silent as I began reading. According to this forensic accounting report, $42,374 was removed from my personal savings account on March 15th without my knowledge or consent. This money represented 4 years and 2 months of disciplined saving from my nursing salary. My mother set down her champagne glass, her face paling. "Serafina, what is this about? Why are you bringing legal documents to a family dinner?" "Because," I continued calmly, "this family dinner is actually a celebration of theft. You are asking me to toast the purchase of a house bought with my stolen money while pretending that this was some kind of generous gift from you to Vivian." Vivian finally looked up from her phone, her expression shifting from smug satisfaction to confused irritation. "What are you talking about? Mom and Dad bought me the house. They used their own money." I pulled out the next document. Bank records showing the withdrawal from my account and the deposit into the escrow account for Vivian's house purchase. "Actually, Vivian, 94% of your house purchase was funded by money I earned and saved. Our parents contributed less than $3,000 of their own money to this transaction." The silence that followed was deafening. My father cleared his throat, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. "Now, Sarah, we have already discussed this. We used your money as an investment on your behalf. You still have an interest in the property." I pulled out another document, a legal analysis of property ownership rights. According to Arizona state law, since my name appears nowhere on the deed, I have no legal claim to the property despite providing the funding. This means I have been defrauded of my entire life savings with no compensation or recourse through normal family channels. "This is ridiculous," Vivian snapped, standing up abruptly. "You are trying to ruin my celebration with your drama. I did not ask for your money specifically. Mom and Dad made a financial decision. Take it up with them." "I am taking it up with all of you," I replied, maintaining my calm tone while my heart pounded. "Because according to my attorney, each of you bears legal responsibility for this theft." The word attorney hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded. My mother gasped audibly, and my father's face went through several shades of red before settling on an alarming purple. "Attorney?" my mother whispered. "Serafina, you contacted a lawyer about family business." "I contacted 3 lawyers, actually, along with a forensic accountant, a financial advisor, and several other professionals who specialize in family financial crimes." I pulled out business cards for each professional and laid them on the coffee table like playing cards. They were all unanimous in their assessment. What you did constitutes theft, fraud, and financial exploitation. Vivian sank back onto the couch, her earlier smugness replaced by genuine fear. "You cannot see your own family. That is insane." "I can and I will unless my money is returned in full within 30 days. I pulled out the final document, a formal demand letter prepared by my attorney. This letter outlines exactly what needs to happen to resolve this situation without legal action. $47,000 returned to my account, plus interest and compensation for the damages this theft has caused to my financial planning. My father tried to bluster his way back to authority. "This is blackmail, Serafina. You cannot threaten your own family with lawsuits over money." "It is not blackmail when someone demands the return of their own stolen property," I replied. "And you stopped being family the moment you decided to steal from me to benefit Vivian." The next hour devolved into chaos. My parents alternated between trying to guilt me into dropping my demands and threatening to disown me if I pursued legal action. Vivian went through several emotional stages, starting with denial, progressing through anger, and ending with desperate bargaining. "I cannot give you the money back," she finally admitted through tears. "I already spent some of it on furniture and renovations. The house is my home now. You cannot take away my home." "I am not taking away your home," I replied coldly. "I am taking back my money. If you cannot afford the house without my stolen savings, then you cannot afford the house." During this confrontation, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, "Standing by if you need backup. Remember, you are fighting for your future, not just money." That message reminded me that I was not alone in this battle. Over the past month, I had built a network of professionals and family members who understood the gravity of what had been done to me. Dr. Walsh had prepared comprehensive documentation of the financial damage. Marcus had helped me understand the long-term implications for my retirement and future planning. Dr. Chin had provided both emotional support and professional references for character witnesses. Most importantly, I had connected with other nurses who had experienced similar family financial betrayals. Through online support groups and professional networks, I had learned that family theft was more common than I had realized, and that victims who fought back legally had significantly better outcomes than those who tried to resolve everything through family discussions. "I am giving you exactly what you gave me," I said as I prepared to leave the disastrous dinner. "No choice in the matter. You have 30 days to return my money, or this becomes a legal matter that will be resolved in court." As I walked toward my car, my mother called after me desperately. "Serafina, please. We can work something out as a family. You do not need to involve lawyers and courts. We love you." I turned back to look at them standing in the doorway, my parents, who had taught me to value honesty and hard work while they plotted to steal the fruits of that work. And my sister, who had learned to take whatever she wanted regardless of who it hurt. "You should have thought about love before you stole from me," I called back. "Now you can think about consequences." The war had officially begun, and I intended to win it. The 30-day deadline came and went without a single dollar returned to my account. Instead, I received a series of increasingly desperate phone calls from my family, each conversation revealing new depths of their selfishness and entitlement. My mother suggested I could earn back my money by providing free nursing care for my aging grandmother. My father proposed that I move back home and pay rent to help them rebuild the family finances. Most audaciously, Vivian offered to let me clean her house twice a month in exchange for $50 per visit. Their counteroffers only strengthened my resolve. On day 31, I walked into the offices of Henderson and Associates and officially filed suit against all 3 of them for theft, fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. The legal papers were served simultaneously at my parents' home and Vivian's new house on a bright Tuesday morning in May. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Within hours of being served, my phone exploded with calls from panicked family members. My mother sobbed into the voicemail, claiming I was destroying the family over money. My father left angry messages threatening to cut me out of everything, as if he had not already stolen everything I had worked for. Vivian's response was the most telling. She called me a vindictive psycho and declared that she would fight this with everything she had. But my legal strategy extended far beyond the civil lawsuit. Dr. Walsh's investigation had uncovered additional financial irregularities that painted an even darker picture of my family's financial crimes. It turned out that my parents had been systematically draining my savings account for months before the house purchase, taking smaller amounts that I had not noticed during my busy work schedule. The total theft was actually closer to $52,000, not the $47,000 I had initially calculated. More damaging still, Dr. Walsh discovered that my father had forged my signature on several bank documents, including a form that increased his access to my account and another that authorized automatic transfers. These forgeries elevated the case from civil theft to criminal fraud, opening the door for criminal charges in addition to my civil suit. The evidence was overwhelming. I had bank surveillance footage showing my father at the bank on days when I was working 12-hour shifts at the hospital. I had handwriting analysis proving the forged signatures. Most importantly, I had their own social media posts and text messages celebrating the purchase of Vivian's house, while never mentioning that the money came from me. As the legal pressure mounted, the family's solidarity began cracking. My mother, terrified of criminal charges, started distancing herself from the scheme by claiming she had trusted my father to handle the financial details legally. She hired her own attorney and began cooperating with the investigation in exchange for reduced liability. My father, faced with potential criminal charges for forgery and bank fraud, finally began to grasp the seriousness of his situation. His attorney reached out to mine with settlement offers that started ridiculously low and gradually increased as more evidence emerged. First, they offered to return $20,000, then $30,000. Eventually, they reached $45,000, still short of the full amount stolen plus damages. But it was Vivian's response that provided the most satisfaction. Faced with the possibility of losing her dream house, she hired the most expensive attorney she could afford and began a scorched-earth defense strategy. She filed countersuits claiming that I had given verbal permission for the money to be used. She accused me of elder abuse for manipulating our parents with legal threats. Most desperately, she claimed that the money had been an early inheritance that she deserved for taking care of our parents. Every one of her lies was easily disproven by the extensive documentation I had gathered. Her claims of verbal permission were contradicted by her own social media posts expressing surprise and gratitude when our parents generously bought her house. Her elder abuse accusations fell apart when investigators interviewed our healthy, financially stable parents who clearly needed no care from anyone. Her inheritance claim was demolished by the fact that our parents were nowhere near death and had never mentioned any intention to distribute their estate early. The turning point came during depositions. Under oath, Vivian was forced to admit that she had known the money came from my account, but had convinced herself that our parents had permission to use it. She acknowledged that she had never spoken to me directly about using my savings. Most damaging of all, she admitted that she had encouraged our parents to take the money because she needed the house immediately and I could always save more money later. My father's deposition was even more devastating. Faced with clear evidence of forgery and the possibility of criminal charges, he broke down completely. He admitted to forging my signature on multiple documents. He confessed that he had been taking money from my account for months to cover his gambling debts before finally using the bulk of it for Vivian's house. He revealed that Vivian had known about the earlier thefts and had threatened to expose them unless he helped her get the house she wanted. The truth was uglier than I had imagined. This had not been a spontaneous family decision to help Vivian. It had been a calculated crime spree that began with my father stealing money to cover his gambling losses and escalated into a full-scale theft when Vivian decided to blackmail him into buying her a house. As the depositions and evidence mounted, settlement negotiations intensified. My attorney, armed with proof of criminal activity and a client who was clearly the victim of systematic family exploitation, was in an unassailable position. The final settlement demand was simple: full restitution of $52,000 plus interest, legal fees, and punitive damages, for a total of $68,000. The family that had once dismissed my financial concerns and lectured me about greed suddenly discovered the true value of money when they faced losing their own. My parents were forced to take a second mortgage on their house to cover their portion of the settlement. Vivian had to sell her dream house at a loss in a hurried sale to raise her share of the money. The most satisfying moment came when my attorney called to inform me that all settlement checks had cleared and my account had been fully restored. Not only had I recovered every stolen dollar, but the additional damages meant I now had more money than I had started with. More importantly, I had proven that actions have consequences, even within families. The settlement money hit my account on a gray Thursday morning in August, exactly 5 months after my family had first stolen my savings. I stared at the bank app on my phone, watching the numbers that represented not just financial restoration, but complete vindication of my decision to fight back. $68,000. More than I had saved originally, thanks to the damages and interest my family was required to pay for their crimes. But the money was only part of my victory. The real satisfaction came from watching the complete collapse of the family dynamic that had allowed such exploitation to occur in the first place. My parents' marriage, which had appeared solid for 32 years, crumbled under the financial and legal pressure. My mother, who had initially supported my father's theft, could not forgive him for the gambling addiction he had hidden from her for years. The revelation that he had been stealing from their own daughter to cover betting debts destroyed whatever trust remained between them. She filed for divorce within 2 weeks of the settlement, citing financial infidelity and emotional abuse. My father found himself completely isolated. His gambling addiction, once a secret shame, was now public knowledge thanks to court documents and family gossip. His other children from his first marriage, who had previously maintained cordial relationships with our side of the family, cut off contact entirely after learning about his theft from me. His brother Marcus refused to speak to him, calling him a disgrace to the family name. Even his elderly mother, my grandmother, expressed shock and disappointment at his betrayal of his own daughter. The financial consequences for my parents were severe and immediate. The second mortgage they had taken to pay the settlement left them with monthly payments they could barely afford on their retirement income. My mother, now facing divorce proceedings, hired her own attorney and forensic accountant to protect her assets from my father's creditors and potential future gambling losses. Their comfortable suburban lifestyle evaporated overnight as they struggled to pay legal fees, settlement costs, and the aftermath of years of hidden financial mismanagement. But it was Vivian who experienced the most dramatic fall. Her dream house, purchased with my stolen money, had to be sold in a rush to raise funds for the settlement. The quick sale in a cooling real estate market meant she lost money on the property, taking a $12,000 loss after realtor fees and closing costs. The furniture and renovations she had bought with the remainder of my savings had to be sold at garage sale prices to help cover her legal expenses. The financial devastation was only the beginning of Vivian's problems. Her social media presence, once filled with triumphant posts about her new house and successful lifestyle, became a source of embarrassment as word spread about the theft and lawsuit. Friends who had congratulated her on her good fortune now knew that her house had been purchased with stolen money. Her carefully curated image as a successful young woman collapsed into the reality of what she actually was. A 25-year-old woman who had conspired with her parents to steal from her own sister. The employment consequences were swift and merciless. Vivian's part-time retail job eliminated her position during the legal proceedings, citing character concerns after background checks revealed the pending lawsuit. Her attempts to find new employment were hampered by the public nature of the court records and the extensive documentation of her role in the theft. Potential employers could easily find news articles and court filings describing her actions. More devastating than the financial and professional consequences was the complete destruction of Vivian's relationship with the extended family. Our cousin Marcus, who had been my strongest supporter throughout the ordeal, made sure that every relative understood exactly what had happened and who was responsible. Aunts and uncles who had once doted on Vivian now saw her as a cautionary tale about entitlement and moral failure. The annual family Christmas gathering, once hosted proudly by my parents at their suburban home, was canceled indefinitely. There was simply no way to gather the family when half the members were pursuing legal action against the other half. My grandmother, approaching 90 and heartbroken by the destruction of her family, stopped speaking to my father entirely and asked other relatives to keep her updated on my life, while cutting off all contact with his side of the family. The ripple effects extended beyond our immediate family. My father's gambling debts, revealed during the legal discovery process, included money borrowed from family friends and coworkers. These relationships, built over decades of apparent respectability, disintegrated as people realized they had been lied to and manipulated. Several family friends who had loaned money to my father during his gambling spiral demanded immediate repayment, further straining his already desperate financial situation. My mother's social circle, built largely around her identity as a devoted wife and mother, also crumbled. The women she had known for years struggled to reconcile the Patricia they thought they knew with the woman who had helped steal her own daughter's life savings. Book clubs and social groups that had once welcomed her warmly now buzzed with gossip about her family's dysfunction. The most telling indicator of how completely the family had collapsed came in September, 2 months after the settlement. My grandmother's birthday, traditionally the most important family gathering of the year, proceeded without my parents or Vivian. Instead, Marcus organized a small celebration that included me, several cousins, and family friends who wanted to show their support for both my grandmother and me. During that gathering, my grandmother pulled me aside for a private conversation that brought tears to my eyes. "Serafina," she said, gripping my hands with surprising strength, "I want you to know how proud I am of you for standing up for yourself. What your father did was unforgivable, and you were right to fight back. You showed more backbone in 6 months than the rest of this family has shown in years." She went on to tell me that she had rewritten her will, removing my father as executor and naming Marcus instead. She had also established a trust fund specifically for my future children, ensuring that they would inherit something meaningful regardless of whatever further financial chaos my father might create. The conversation with my grandmother crystallized something I had been realizing throughout this entire ordeal. The family I had lost was not worth mourning. The people who had loved and supported me were still in my life, while those who had exploited and betrayed me had revealed their true characters. The collapse of my nuclear family was not a tragedy to be mourned, but a necessary clearing away of toxic relationships that had been masquerading as love. As I drove home from my grandmother's birthday celebration, I felt lighter than I had in months. The family that had stolen from me was gone, but the family that mattered was stronger than ever. 1 year after discovering my family's betrayal, I stood in the kitchen of my own house, a beautiful 3-bedroom ranch in Tempe that I had purchased with my recovered savings plus the additional settlement money. The morning sun streamed through windows that belonged to me, in a space that represented everything my family had tried to steal from my future. The house closing had been deeply emotional. As I signed the final papers and received the keys, I thought about how different this moment would have been if I had not fought back against my family's theft. Without my legal victory, I would still be living in that cramped studio apartment, starting over from zero and trying to rebuild savings that should never have been stolen in the first place. My real estate agent, Sarah, had become something of a friend during the house hunting process. When I told her the full story of how I had nearly lost my dream because of family theft, She was amazed by my determination to fight back legally. Most people in your situation would have just accepted the loss and tried to move on, she said during our final meeting. You proved that standing up for yourself is always worth it, even when it means going against family. The professional recognition that followed my legal victory was unexpected but deeply satisfying. Dr. Chin nominated me for the hospital's Courage in Adversity Award, citing not just my excellent patient care, but my willingness to fight for justice even when it required tremendous personal sacrifice. The award ceremony was attended by colleagues who knew my story and respected my refusal to be victimized by my own family. My nursing career had flourished during the legal battle and its aftermath. The confidence I gained from successfully defending my rights translated into stronger advocacy for my patients and clearer communication with difficult families. I was promoted to charge nurse and began mentoring newer nurses who face their own challenges with boundary setting and self-advocacy. More importantly, I had built a chosen family that far exceeded the biological one I had lost. Marcus remained my closest family ally, visiting my new house regularly and serving as the uncle figure I hoped to provide for his children someday. Dr. Walsh, the forensic accountant who had been instrumental in building my case, stayed in touch and eventually became a close friend who shared my interest in financial literacy and empowerment. The support group for family financial abuse survivors that I joined during the legal process evolved into lasting friendships with people who understood the unique pain of being betrayed by those who should have protected you. We celebrated each other's victories and provided comfort during setbacks, creating the kind of unconditional support that healthy families should provide. My grandmother remained the crown jewel of my rebuilt family structure. At 91, she was sharper and more supportive than people half her age. She visited my new house monthly, always bringing homemade cookies and stories about relatives I had never met. During one particularly meaningful visit, she told me that watching me fight for myself had inspired her to stand up to other family members who had been taking advantage of her generosity for years. You taught this whole family that actions have consequences, she said, settling into my comfortable living room chair. People who thought they could walk all over others because we share blood learned that respect has to be earned, not assumed. The updates I received about my nuclear family painted a picture of continued consequences for their choices. My parents' divorce was finalized 8 months after the settlement, with my mother retaining the house and most of their shared assets, while my father moved into a small apartment. His gambling addiction, now that it was no longer a secret, had spiraled further out of control without the easy access to my money that had enabled it for so long. Vivian's life had stabilized at a much lower level than she was accustomed to. She eventually found steady employment as a receptionist at a dental office, a job that provided decent benefits, but none of the status or excitement she craved. She moved into a small apartment across town and seemed to have learned, finally, that her actions had permanent consequences. According to Marcus, she had asked about me several times through mutual relatives, but had never attempted direct contact. My father made one attempt at reconciliation about 6 months after the settlement. He showed up at the hospital where I worked, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen him. He claimed he wanted to make things right and rebuild our relationship, but his apologies rang hollow because they focused entirely on his remorse rather than acknowledging the full extent of what he had done to me. I was wrong to take your money, he said, standing awkwardly in the hospital lobby while I remained professionally polite but emotionally distant. I hope someday you can forgive me and we can be a family again. I looked at this man who had taught me to value honesty while he stole from me, who had preached about family loyalty while betraying mine completely, and felt nothing but pity for him. Dad, I said calmly, forgiveness is something you earn through changed behavior over time, not something you can request in a parking lot conversation. You stole from your own daughter to cover gambling debts, then conspired with Vivian to steal even more money for her house. Those actions have consequences that cannot be erased with an apology. He left without argument, perhaps finally understanding that some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. The most rewarding aspect of my new life was the financial security I had fought so hard to protect. My savings account grew steadily each month, but more importantly, I now understood my own strength and resilience. I had faced the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged victorious, not just financially but emotionally and spiritually. I started a blog called Family Financial Betrayal Recovery that documented my journey from victim to victor. The response was overwhelming, with hundreds of people sharing their own stories of family theft and asking for advice about legal options and emotional healing. Through the blog, I connected with attorneys, financial advisors, and therapists who specialized in helping people recover from family financial crimes. As I finished making coffee in my dream kitchen on that anniversary morning, I reflected on how profoundly my life had changed. A year ago, I had been a naive young woman who believed that family loyalty meant accepting whatever treatment they chose to give me. Now I was a homeowner, an advocate, and a survivor who understood that true family is defined by love and respect, not blood and shared history. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Happy anniversary of your victory. Still proud of you for fighting back against the family thieves." I smiled as I typed back, "Best decision I ever made." Some battles are worth fighting, especially when the stakes are your entire future. The morning sun continued to stream through my windows, illuminating a life rebuilt on my own terms, surrounded by people who had earned their place in my world through their actions rather than demanding it through their genetics. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and standing up for what is right? Have you experienced betrayal by people who should have protected you instead of exploited you? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts about family karma and justice. I read every single one, and your stories inspire others who are facing similar battles. If this story of family revenge and justice resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama stories about standing up to toxic family dynamics. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it is okay to fight for yourself, even against family members who think blood relations give them permission to abuse your trust. Thank you all for your incredible support throughout this journey, and remember that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you were born into. May you always have the courage to protect what you have earned and the wisdom to know when fighting back is the only path to justice.